Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the work order with maps and directions. In this exclusive training, I'm going to show you how to create your own work order and add dynamic mapping, dynamic directions from any location. It's going to be an incredible training. I can't wait. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Alright, thanks so much for joining me today. I've got a great one to show you. This one, we're not only going to create an incredible work order that's going to allow you to create multiple items, save, update, delete, print. We are going to add mapping onto that. That means from any location to any other location, we're going to get dynamic, accurate directions from Google and get a map. And we're going to allow you to show you how to control your own zoom level so you can set the zoom however you want it. We've got a lot to cover. It's going to be a comprehensive training. I'm going to go from the beginning. We're going to go over every line of code. I'm going to show you all the design aspects, all the new features, and we're going to show you how you can put this in your own software. Even if you're not building a work order, you're going to be able to put in mapping and directions on any type of application in Excel. So regardless of what you want to build, I would love to see you put this mapping in. So we got a lot to cover. I create these trainings each and every Tuesday. This is a free download. All you have to do is click the links down in the description with your email or Facebook, and we're going to get this workbook sent right to you absolutely free. If you do like these workbooks and you want to help support us, I create these applications each and every week, and I've collected 150 of my best applications. And I've got a low price of just $56. That's 37 cents per application delivered straight to you in a full zip file. And those are my 150 best. That's a really popular one. So if you want that, I'll include the links down in the description. All right, as I mentioned, we do create these every week. The best way to get alerted is to subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure you turn on that notification icons bell. That'll get you alerted. That'll get you notified right away. So let's get started. We've got a lot to cover. Let me go ahead and show you. We're going to have so many features. We've got macros. We've got dynamic drop-down lists. We have mapping, dynamic directions, and a lot. So basically, when you select a brand new customer here, you get a dynamic drop-down list of job addresses for that specific customer. Automatically, it's going to pull up a map. Even if it doesn't exist, it's going to pull up a map of that location, automatically insert it, and insert the directions automatically from a default location that you've set up. In fact, we've got our default location all the way over here. We've got a from address. We've got a picture location where we're going to storing our pictures. And what does that mean? That means when we've already added a picture, like we just pulled this out from the internet. So when we come back into that, we go out of it, go to another address, the map's going to pull up. It's going to look to see if we have one on file. If not, it'll pull it up. Otherwise, and we come back to it, it's going to be a lot quicker because it's already stored in the memory. I'm going to show you how to do that too. So we've got a lot to cover. We're going to be using some fantastic third-party tools. One we've used before called Integromat. It's a really fantastic tool, something I've been using a lot in the videos, and it's so dynamic. It allows us to do a lot of things. We're going to be using that along with Google Maps, and a really great feature. What we want to do first, let's go into the work order and see how this work order functions. We can save our work order. We can add a new work order here. It's going to let us choose a customer. We've got a lot of customers. Once we have a customer, we get a drop-down list of job addresses that are specific to that customer only. So we've got a drop-down list. It automatically, once we put in a job address, it's going to put in our map. It's going to put in the directions based on our current from address location. Let me slide that over so we can see what based on our from address. So if this changes, we also have an automatic zoom level. So if we change that zoom level, it's automatically going to change that map zoom level as well. We can also put in a list of items, work items that are tied to a specific list. I'm going to show you that in a second. As many work items as we want here. And then once we have the work items, let me zoom up a little bit here so we can see everything. And then all we need to do then is just click save and update. Once we save it, we've got a lot. We can delete it, we can print it, we can refresh the map if there's a change on the map. We can also refresh the directions if we make a change to the from address or to address, it'll refresh the directions. So we've got a lot to go from. Let's get started on this. This particular training, we're not going to focus because I've got so much to show you in the macros. I've got so much to show you as far as the mapping. So as far as what you're seeing on the screen, there's nothing really amazing about this. It's kind of normal. We've got some normal buttons that we've gone over. We've got some icons. So this particular training, we're not going to go over the building because there's nothing really special about it. We've just had some formats, and there's nothing really that's going to stand out as far as training on this. One good thing that when we run out of space, like look how we have a bridge column here. It's something I wanted to bring to your attention, and I want to put in a text that's going to bridge it. So all I did in this case is I used a text box here. So you can drag this. So that's kind of a nice feature. I've used a text box to bridge over it because it remains consistent. Even if we wanted it dynamic, we could. I've put a little icon here just to cell format. Everything else here is kind of changed. If I want to search for a new work order, all I need to do is put in the work order number, and it's going to bring up the old work order and whatever we want. So when we load another one, it's going to automatically load. If the map is found, it's going to load the map from the record automatically like this. So we've got really a lot to cover. I can't wait. We're going to get started right away on this. So basically the screen is kind of basic. So let's go over what we have as far as on the screen, what I've developed. We've got a list of work order lists. This is the list for each work order. We're going to have a work order ID. We are going to have a start date, a customer, a job address, and then assign to. So if we assign a technician, we can easily just assign a technician right here. So it's kind of basic on this. Of course, feel free to download this and customize it however you like. We've got a list of work order items. Now these are saved per work order. Notice work order number 1 has 4 different items. Work order number 2 has 2 different items, 3 and 4. So we can easily add work orders. So they're saved. Also, if you can hear a storm in back of me, there's a major storm going on outside. So my apologies for if you guys can hear it background. I can't control that much. But what I can control is to make sure you guys get amazing training each and every week. So patience if there's extra feedback on the sound. There's a huge storm going on outside. All right, let's get to it. So we've got a list of items. You can have any item name, item description, a default quantity. We don't really need that. And the sales price, we don't even need that. Really just item description, I'll just delete that. That's from the previous training. You can add your own, whatever else you want to put in the item description, you can. If you do want to put a price, you can add that on. We're just going to use the item name and description for the most part. These are work items. We've got a list of customers, just some basic, and keep note that the customer has an ID. And I've got a list of job addresses. Now keep in mind, each job has a unique ID, and then there's a customer ID. So particularly customer number 1 has this address, customer number 1 has this address. So I'm going to show you how to put in a customer number here in an advanced filter and pull out just the unique job addresses for that customer. Okay, so it's going to be really great, really dynamic. So it is this particular job address that is going to be changed on our work order. So as we change this customer here, so does the list of job addresses here. So those are the list. So once we change it, we can then change it, and of course the picture is going to come up automatically. All right, so we've got that. We've got the ability to delete, print, refresh, and get directions. Now the refresh and get directions, those are kind of automated. Basically what that is you don't necessarily need that, because as soon as I change the address, both the directions and the map are going to be automated. This is kind of annoying me. I want to make this consistent. I reduced some of the row heights here. So we've got a format a height of 0.35. I'm just going to make this one also 0.35. I want them to remain consistent, 0.35. Keep in mind that when you do update you can use the selection tool just in case. I want to make sure they're all the same, right? Let's make sure they're all consistent, 0.35. And then what we want to do is make sure that when you have these buttons and you adjust both the column widths or heights, you're going to right click and go into the format objects. I'm going to set this right now into the properties. Make sure you're going to move but don't size with cells. That way you don't get different thicknesses as well. All right, so we understand that we have a list of data here. This is our data. Now let's get it all in and see how that works. And then we're going to go into the third party and see how that works. So just keep in mind that I want the pictures stored in a specific location. I'm going to use my Dropbox map pictures. This particular location is right here. If you see, I've got stored pictures here. So it's going to pull those pictures up, and I'm going to give those pictures a specific name. They're all going to start with map-job and then the job number 1. So this is the job number. If it's found, it's just going to pull up that picture. If it's not found, it is going to then look it up from Google Maps and download it directly. Same with the directions. It's going to look up the directions based on the from address set. Let's say you want a company address. You could also add in program if you have build this into a scheduling program. I would suggest making the job address dynamic based on the previous job. So if you got a technician going to 4 different jobs and you're building this into the scheduling application, you can set this from address dynamically based on the previous job address that technician attended. Okay, so we've got that. So basically that's all we have. We just have the customer and job address. And let's get into some of the work and see exactly how this works. The first thing you'll notice is basically on change of customers, right? I want this drop-down list to automate. So what I want to do is I want to create an advanced filter for the job addresses based on a specific criteria. That criteria is going to be the customer ID. So what do we need to do? We need to extract that customer ID. We need to get a few items. Let's go over some of the hidden columns. In columns A and B, I've put some information. Now, if you're building these applications, you just want to right-click and hide these columns from the user. These are for admin. These are admin columns. Generally, I use A and B for admin. So the first thing I want to get is a customer ID. So the best way to do that, I've got some named ranges to help us with that. Let's go over the named ranges, and then we're going to get into the formulas and see that. Into the formulas, name manager. If we take a look, now the criteria is just created automatically by VBA when we create advanced filters, so we can ignore that for now. We're going to focus on the custom ID. If I use the tab key and tap into it, we can see that we have an offset formula, and that offset formula is going to help us create a dynamic named range starting on A2. Now, why do I start on A2 and not A3? I start on A2 because I want to make sure even if there's no data, this doesn't return an error. So starting with the header, but then I'm going to move one row down. This one right here inside the offset, that allows us to move one row down. So we're starting one row down, but A2 is within our formula. Also, we're going to do the same thing when we count. I want to know how many rows to count. So we're going to count them. We're going to also start on row 2 using A2 all the way to A99, except we're going to subtract one because we actually don't want to include the header inside, and we want it just for one column. This is going to use the offset. This is the same offset that we use. So when we tab into that, shift tab back out of that, you'll see that we have the dancing ants around the entire column. You'll want to check this when you build these formulas to make sure that those dancing ants encompass the entire column, the entire range that you want, all of the range. Okay, so we have customer ID, we've given that. We've given a customer name, that's going to be also using the offset, same type. We have the customer addresses, which we can use. Now keep in mind the customer addresses, that is going to be also a dynamic, same, also starting a true, but that's going to be based on some filter results. And we're going to go into that advanced filter in VBA, but understand that the customer addresses are dynamic based on results. So these are results. These change based on whatever the criteria, the customer ID located in I3. So that's going to change. That's a formula based on the customer. We have an item name. So we've got a list of item names also using offset in the item name list. We have a list of job addresses. Of course, this is just based on the job addresses, a list of all the job addresses. We have a job ID, right? That's a dynamic based on all the job IDs. And then we have a work order ID. Now, the work order IDs are all the work orders that are listed, right? And they increment by one for each new one. Okay, so let's go over some of the formulas. The customer ID, what I want here is that I want to extract the customer ID and I want to get it from this name here. And if there's an error, I want to return blank. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to index the customer IDs. That's the named range. Now, all we need to do is return the row. So the best way to do that is use to match. So I'm going to match based on whatever is located in E2. And I'm going to match it based on all the customer names. And I want an exact match, so that's going to use 0. All right, I want to index just that one single column, and so that's going to return it. And if there's an error, I want to return empty. So that means like on a new work order, it would return empty until they put the specific customer in. Once I have that, I also want to know the customer row. What is the row of the customer? Again, this case, we're just a simple match. I'm going to use matching E2, the customer name, 0 for the exact +2. Now, why am I adding +2? Because I want the row. If we look at our customers and I return the first customer, it's going to return 1, but I don't want 1. I want the row number, and I know it's the first record in our named range, but I want the actual row. So to do that, we're just going to add 2, and that's going to get us 3. 3 is the result that we want. So we've got the customer row. I also want the job ID. We're going to use exactly the same type of index match formula that we used for customers, but in this case, we're going to index the job IDs. We're going to match it based on the job addresses. Based on E3, we're going to look it up, and look up the array as job addresses. That's the array we're looking up. We want an exact match, and we just want to return one column, which is that job ID column, and if there's an error, return blank. That's going to let us know the job ID. I want to know that. And also the job row, again, using match and adding 2, just like we did with the customers. I want to know when the work order is loading or not. when it's loading, when we change this, if we change this to 1, that's going to switch to true and then back to false. It should go back to false as soon as it's loaded. And also I want to know if it's a new work order. When we click add new, I want this to go to true so I know whether it's a new work order or an existing. As soon as we add it, I'll make that update. As soon as we change this to 1, it's going to load up that 1. But I'll make sure that when we make a change here, it's going to load that up. Okay, that's how we get it to load. That's how we change it. What about the work order ID? That is automatically, I'm going to place that in every time we load a work order. I'm going to go ahead and place that work order ID right here. And I need that here because I want to also know what row that's on. If we look at the work order list and we see row 4 is going to be hold work order ID 2. So I want to know that. If we're work order ID, I want to use match. Again, same thing. We're matching what's located in B8, and we're going to look it up on the work order IDs. We want an exact match, and we're going to add 2. So it's pretty easy. And then I want the next work order ID. If you notice, we've got 4 work orders. How do I get the next ID? Well, the best way to do it is to use the max function. The only requirement is that all the work orders have to be numerical. If you decide you want to have some combination of numerical and text in our alphanumeric type of ID, you can do that, but just use a helper column. So that means you'd have one column, maybe a hidden column that contains numerical, and then this grows as you put in whatever text you want against that. Like maybe you want the first customer few letters or something like that. So you can do that as well. But we're going to use the max function. So we're going to use the max of all the work order IDs, and then we're going to add 1. That is going to give us our next. If for some reason there are new work orders, if the entire list has been cleared out, there would cause an error on that because there's no max. So if there's an error, I just want to start it out as 1. That way it ensures that if for some reason there's no data, this is going to automatically go to 1. That's pretty much it for the formulas. Relatively simple. One additional small formula here, the customer ID, the criteria, is going to be whatever's in work order B2. Whatever's in B2 is going to show up. That's the customer ID. That's what I want. When I change this, I want to know run an advanced filter. We're going to go into that right now. Let's go into the VBA editor. We can do that through the developers tab. If you don't have the developers tab open, just go into the options here, and you want to select the customize ribbon and then make sure the developer is selected. You can also use the shortcut Alt F11 to get you there. That'll get you into the developers. And our developers, we only have a few different types of code here directly on the work order sheet here. And we also have 2 different macros, one for getting directions and getting the picture we're going to go over, and just a few small ones for our work order, which is going to help save or update our work order, a new work order, load the work order, delete, and print. Very, very relatively easy. I'm going to walk you step by step through the process and how to pull in max. Let's take a look at some of the on-sheet macros. Remember, the first one we want to do is on customer name change. Now, if I drop this down just a little bit, we can see both. So the first thing we want to focus on is when there's a change to E2, that is our customer name, and we want to make sure that B2 is not empty. Why would B2 empty? B2 might be empty if you've entered an incorrect customer ID. Remember, this is on air. If on air, there's going to be a blank. So if there's an error, it would be blank. So we want to make sure that B2 is not empty. Assuming that they have made a change to E2 and B2 is not empty, which means they've entered a correct customer. In that case, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I want to run an advanced filter. So the best way to do that is to determine the last job row. I want to use an advanced. I want to know basically what I want to do is I want to get a list of jobs for only this customer, How do we know that? Well, we know the customer ID here is in B2. So if we have a list of job addresses here, and our customer ID is here, for example, customer number 1, let's say we have customer number 1, customer ID number 1. We know that this job address belongs to customer number 1. We know that this job address belongs to customer number 1 and this job. So what I want to do is I want to list only those job addresses for customer number 1. To do that, all we need to use is a relatively simple advanced filter. We need the customer, we need the criteria. In this case, we're going to use a formula for that. And then all we want to do is simply list those job addresses for that specific customer. Create a dynamic named range, which we've already showed you, called customer job addresses. And then use that particular data validation name inside there. So that data validation, if we see, is called customer addresses. That's the one. So that means it's going to change. If we see that, it's going to be our job address. So no matter what is listed here, it's going to be on that drop-down list, that dynamic drop-down list. So in that data validation, it's always going to be based on the customer selected. So as soon as they make a change and as soon as B2, that's what we want to run. So the first thing I want to do to run our advanced filter is determine what is the last row. In this case, the last row is 182. Once we have that last row, we can then get our criteria, which is going to be located in I2 through I3, and then place the results located right here in L2. And that's just what we're going to do inside the code. So the last job row defined up here as a long item. Sheet 6, that's the one we're focused. We're focused on job addresses, which is sheet 6. And then A6 and XLF. That's going to get us the last row of the value. Then all we need to do is simply run our advanced filter. Sheet 6, A2, make sure you include the headers and make sure those headers are exactly the same in your criteria as well as your results. So the headers must match. So we're going to run it all the way to the last job row. We're going to run an advanced filter and we want to copy that to a different location. We want to, based on what criteria? Based on I2, I3, based on the header name and the criteria, which is located in I3. Then what we do is we want to get those results into L2. I only want those results of job addresses. I want to put them in that L2, and then I want to make sure they're all unique. That's it. Once we have that, there's nothing else to do because we've already assigned this data validation one. So as soon as we change that customer here, automatically the list of jobs is automatically going to change. Notice the list of jobs here, and then when I go back to here, it's automatically going to change. Notice they're different. So that's a great way to get dynamic drop-down lists based on whatever settings you want. And so we can then change the address to anything we want, like this. And as soon as we then make a change, that's the code we're going to go into next. As soon as we make a change, we are going to then update the map and update the directions. Okay, so let's go into that. As soon as we make a change to E3, we want to make sure that B4 is not empty. So not only do I want to, when we make a change here, I want to load the maps and I want to load the directions. So how do I do that? Well, the best way to do that is to make sure that we actually have a job address, a proper job address. So B4 is that. If there's an error, it's going to be blank. So as long as B4 is not blank, we know we've entered a proper job address. So that's just the check that I run right here. If there's a change to E3 and B4 does not equal empty, then run these macros, get picture mapper and get direction. We're going to go over that macro very, very soon. So that's all we have to do. And next up on the work order item name change, as we're going on the sheets, let's continue on down with the sheet changes. What does that mean on a change of D7 through D26? When I make a change to D7 all the way to D26, what do I want to happen? Well, pretty simply, I want a few things. I want to get the description of that. Actually, I want to get more than that. I'm going to unhide this. Notice you'll see some text. If I change this to black, I also want to know the row of the item. What is that? The item row. Carpet cleaning is in row 3. If we look into the items, we see that carpet cleaning is in row 3, sofa cleaning 4, and 5. I want to get the row number so I know what row, so it's loaded in. So we can use a formula to do that, and that ensures that we have the right item. And just to make sure that it's value. So the best way to do that is just to use a formula. We can use match item name plus 2. And that what we're going to do is going to allow us to get the exact row of that item. We're adding 2 because our first one starts on row 3, just like we did use on match before. This is going to help us ensure that it's a correct item. Once I know the row, I can automatically pull in the description because I know the row and I know the column. That's right. So let's take a look at that. Once I know the row, I know it's 5, then I know the description is located in B. So if I take B and whatever row has been selected, I can place that directly in here. And that's just what I do inside the code. So assuming that C, which is where a row does not equal empty, assuming that C does not equal empty, if there's an error, it's going to be blank. So assuming it's not, then what I can do is assign that to a variable. So I've dimensioned the item row is long up here. So down here, I can then assign that item row to whatever C is in the item row. Then all I need to do is take in E and the target row equals. That means E and the target row equals, what does it equal? It equals B of this sheet and what row? And this row here, B3, B4, B5, and place that right in the description. That's what I do inside the code here. E and the target row value equals sheet 5. Those are our item sheet. B and the item row. That's going to be copy over the description. So that's going to bring in a description. So that's how we automatically get. So as soon as we add in an item, it's going to automatically add in the description based on that item. And that's pretty much it. That's all we have to do in that to get our items in. On change of work order number. Now when I change this, let's go ahead and save those changes. on change, what I want to do is I want to load that work order up, and I want to load all the items associated with that. I want to load the map and the directions. So on change of G1, I want to make sure that we actually have a row. Notice that if we change it, notice we just changed it, it's going to load up. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we do is on change of G1. So if they make a change to G1 and G1 does not equal empty, and I want to make sure B7 equals false. Why would B7 need to be false? B7 is going to let us know it's a new work order. So as soon as we add new, notice we've placed 5 in here. 5 is going to be the next work order ID. Well, I don't want anything to happen when B7 is true. Okay, I only want it to happen when it's not. So that's the next thing. I think I'll probably add a cancel new in here. And need to add one more button. Cancel new. What cancel is going to do is going to change this to false. So if we change it back to false, and then what we'll do, probably add that in, that would be helpful. And then we can change this back to 1, and it'll load that 1 up. So that's all we have to do. So on change of G1, I want to load in the work order for that, the details. So what we're going to do then, B8 value equals G1. I'm going to take whatever the user has placed in here, I'm going to put it right in here, the work order ID. What is that going to do? That's going to generate the row number, because that row number is based on that. So once I have the row number, in this case it's 3, then I can load in the start date, the customer, the job address, and the assigned to. I can load in all that information because I know the row. So that row is important. So I'm going to take whatever that work order number is, I'm going to place it right here, because it is this particular cell, B8, that's going to be get us our row number. Okay, so that's all. I know I'm moving a little bit quickly. Feel free to do that, but we've got a lot to cover in these trainings, and I try to keep them around an hour. We're probably going over on this one. All right, so then what we're going to do, B8, and then all we're going to do is run the macro work order load. I'm going to go over those macros, the work order macros, right now with you. So let's get into that. What do? We basically want to save, add new, delete, print, and then we'll get into the mapping. So we're going to go over quickly on those. They're relatively simple. Back into the code we go. We're going to focus on this, the work order macros. Now we're going to dimension some of the variables. Work order row, we need to know what work order row we're focused on. The work order item row, we're going to need to go through specific items of that work order. And the last work order item, because we're going to need to run an advanced filter. When we load a work order, we're going to need to run an advanced filter. I'm going to need to know the work order number, and I need to know only those items associated with this specific work order. So we're going to need to get the last work order item, and that'll be in the loading macro. And then I also want the last item row, a specific item row as we loop through the items, the result row, and then the last item result row. All right, so let's go into the save update macro. That's the macro that's been assigned to this save update button. And this is the same exact macro whether we're saving a brand new work order, or whether we're updating an existing macro. It is going to be that same exact macro that runs it. All we need to do is differentiate between a new work order or an existing macro. So the first thing we want to do at least is make sure that the user has entered the required fields. So I'm going to use B3 and B5 as required. That would be why B3 and B5, because B3 is going to tell us if they've got a correct customer. B5 is going to tell us if we have a correct job row. So that means if they've entered any of these incorrectly, we need to let them know to enter private. So if either B3 or B5 is blank, we need to let the user know in a message box to make sure they've entered a correct customer and a correct job address before saving. So that's just what we do. We're going to exit out of that. Nothing else we can do until they enter actual correct customer and job address. All right, the first thing we need to do is make sure we know it's new or existing. And as you remember, our B7 is going to tell us if this is true, we know it's new. If it is false, it is an existing. So we can use that to help us. If B7 value equals true, then we know it's a new work order. Okay. Once it's a new work order, we need to do a few things just for the first time. I want to put in a work order ID. I want to put that in right here in A in the first. So I need to get the first available row and put that work order in here. So I'm going to do that. So how do we do that? Well, we do that right inside the code. The first work order row is going to equal sheet 2. Sheet 2, of course, is our work order list. And then A999X endl plus 1. That is going to get us our first available row. Next up, G1. G1, I want to make sure that that's B10. That's going to add the work order number. What's it going to do? Just ensure it's going to take this G1 and make sure that it takes on the next work order ID. So whatever that next work order ID is, going to place that right in G1. That's going to set us our work order number. I also want to take that work order number. I want to place it right here into A7. It would be for the next one. So that's just what we're going to do in that line of code. Sheet 2, A in the work order row equals B10. That's going to add in the work order row. So all of that is only for new work orders. And then we only have, for existing work orders, we only have one line of code for existing. And that is assign the work order row. Since it's existing, we know that that work order row is located here in B9. That's work order row based on the match. That's going to get us a work order. Once we know the work order row, all we need to do is just add in. We're not using data mapping, which is something I do. I'm just going to add a few different information, just 4 different features. We're going to add in the start date, the customer, the job address, and the assigned to, just in straight. Very, very simple. So B is going to go take on G2, which is the start date. C will take on the customer name. D will take the job address, and then E will take assigned to. Basically, all we're doing is taking this information located in the header of our work order right here, here, and here, and placing it inside our table right here. So that's all we're doing, relatively simple. Now what we have to do is now we have to get the items. Now I need to make sure that these items are also entered into the table. But remember, this particular macro is going to be for both new and existing work orders. So I need to differentiate between which items are new and which items are existing. So what we're going to do is, if it's existing, every time we save it, we're going to put the database row right here. Now these specific items, once they're inside a work order, are saved in something table called work order items. Inside this table, we need to know the work order number, the item, the description, the technician notes, the work order row, row 7, 8, or 9. What does that mean? That means this, 7, 8, or 9. That's the row in the work order. That means when I load them back inside the work order, they get placed in the same rows that we originally added them in. That's really important. That way everything looks the same. So I need to know the work order row, and I also need to know the row of it. This is the row that they're currently in. Notice we're using a formula, row, row, row. This formula is going to represent, so 7, 8, 9, it's always going to keep track of the actual row. This is important because it is this row that I know to save it in. So I'm going to take this, for example, work order number 1, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to take this and I'm going to place it right inside this column right here, column K, 3, 4, 5. So if I make a change to this description or this item, if I change this to kitchen cleaning or sofa cleaning, I know what row in the database. I know that row 5 is the one that I need to update. So when we go to the work order items, I know that it is 5. This information is going to change because I've actually made a change inside the work order. So I know what row to update. Of course, if there is no row here, if there's no row, let's say I add a brand new one here, and there's no row associated with this. Notice in row 11, there is actually no row that's associated with it. In that case, I know it's a brand new item for our database. What it's going to do is going to find the first available row, in this case 17, and it's going to add all that information in for that. So that's just what we're going to do inside the code when we save it. So let's go ahead and go through that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add our update work items. The first thing I want to do is I want to determine the last row. We're going to have to loop through all the rows. So the last row of an item, in this case, the last row is 11, but I need to figure that out based in column D. So we can do that here. D, last item row is D26 and LX, and D26 is the last possible row. So that's going to get us our last row. So now all we need to do is loop through the rows, starting at 7 and going all the way, in this case, to 11. So that's the best way we can do that. So we can start our loop. If for some reason the last item row is less than 7, then we go to no items. We can skip all that, go here to no items. But it shouldn't be. Okay, assuming that we have items, we can start our loop for item row equals 7 to the last item. Now we need to check, has it been saved before? Remember, that is saved in our database K. If K contains a value, we know it's been previously saved. We can assign that row. If not, we need to give it a new row. So that's what we do in the code. If K does not equal empty, then our work order item row is equal to whatever's in K. Else, it is a new one. We need to get a brand new row. It's going to be the first available row in sheet 3 plus 1. That's the first available row. That's going to be our row. Also, for new items, we need to do a few things. Sheet 3, I wanted to put the work order number coming from whatever's in G1, so I need to put that work order number, and that means basically taking whatever's in G1 and placing it right here. I also want to put in the work order number in the row here, so that's important too. So we do that also for new items, and we do that next. So K now has, we all know, now that we've just placed it here in 17, we also know what to put in the 17 right here. So we're also going to put in the 17 right here so we know what row it's been stored on. Okay, so assuming we have that, we also want to put in the work order in the row here, so we can do that here in this code here. So sheet 3, F in the work order takes on the row. So that's F. That's going to go in our row right in F. So we want to put in the row there. That's it. That's all we do for the new items. This we do for existing items. This we do for new items. Everything else, these 3 lines of codes, we do regardless of whether it is a new or existing item. So just 3 in those lines of code. All we're going to be doing is we're going to be placing the item name and the description in here in B and C, and it's going to take its information located right from here, in this case D and E. So I'm going to pull that information in. And next up, I want to take in the tech notes. Because I've got merged cells here, I don't want to go straight through all the way. So we're going to do a different one for G and then a different one. So that's all we're going to do inside here. And next up, I want to put in the tech notes. Well, let's put in the tech notes. If we have any tech notes, we want to put them inside, and that's going to come from whatever's in G. I want to place directly inside here in D. Okay, that's going to put in sub G. So that's just what we do in this line of code right here. So D is going to take on whatever's located in F here. F, actually, it should be G. Let me update that. It should be a G. G is our tech notes. So let's go ahead and update that. All right, so G is going to be our tech notes. And then next up, I want the item row. The last thing we do is E is going to take on the item row. So E, if we look in E, I want to make sure that we save that item row. I want to know what row, and that's going to come in E. That's the row of the work order, because we need to know where to place it in. Okay, so that's it. So that's basically how we take our items and bring it into our database and save them. Next up, all we need to do now that it is no longer a new work order, we've saved it. So now we can mark B7 to false. So that's going to do. That's just what we're going to do, B7 to false. All right, next up, I just want to make sure all of our buttons are visible. These buttons, add new, delete, print, refresh, map, and get directions. Those I only want to display on saved work orders, so we need to make sure that they're displayed. So we can use these lines of code, whatever the button name is, add new button, MSO true. So this is going to make sure that they're all visible. Okay, that's up. Through new work orders, we'll move quickly through this and get right to the maps. New work orders, all we're going to do is set B7 to true, clear out all of the fields, set the current date. We're going to set the current date this. So when we click add new, we're going to clear out all these fields, including, make sure we're including all the rows here, database rows, including all K, setting the start date to whatever the current date is, taking the next work order number using our max formula here and bringing it inside over to G1, and then making sure we set it to 2. So that's it. And then I want to hide those buttons, right? I don't want them to do anything. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to probably add a cancel new button. So that means what we're going to do is we're going to load the first work order, assuming that there's values here, assuming that there's a value in here. What I'm going to do is on the cancel button called cancel new, and all I'm going to do in that work order, that macro, is change this to false and then add 1 here. So all it's going to do is just this one, false, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the first value in here, work order list, which in this case is at A3, whatever's in A3, I'm going to place it right here. So all that's going to do is just automatically load the first work order in like that. Okay, so let's continue on. So with the add new, so all we're going to do again, in this case, we're hiding all these buttons. So everything else is the same. New work order ID from B10 into G1, and then we're hiding the buttons. And then also I wanted, basically I want any map picture that was here, they're always going to be given one name called map picture. So when we add a new one, I want to make sure that this is deleted. If for some reason there was no map picture here, we do need to wrap that on error resume next. So how would we do that? So let's just, let me just set this to false. A cancel button is going to do this automatically. So I'm going to add that in because that's one thing I would like to add in. Okay, so once we have that in here, on error resume next, I'm going to delete any map picture that might be displaying. If for some reason it doesn't exist, it would create an error. So when we wrap that around on error resume next, on error go to 0, it does that. And then E2 select, that's going to select E2 right here, and that gives the user the opportunity to enter the customer since we've already selected that cell for them. That's it for the add new. On the load, it's very, very simple, really. All we're going to do is make sure that B9, we can't load any particular work order unless there's actually a work order row, right? If we're going to be loading all the information from this and this, I need to make sure that we have a row. For example, row 1 is row 3. So I need to make sure that there's actually a row number. If this is empty, if B9 is empty for any reason, then we need to let the user know to please enter a correct work order. If I enter 10, which there's no work order, I need to make sure that we get a message box saying, Please select a correct work order number. Why is that? Why is B9 empty? Because there is no work order number 10. So in that case, we need to make sure that we actually enter a proper work order number. So B9 does that. If range B9 equals empty, then we get the message box. Otherwise, we can assign the work order row to B9, clear out all the fields, display, then bring in all the information into rows G2, E2. That's going to bring all the header information, and take all this information here, start date, customer assigned to, and just bring it in all in here. That's all it's doing in the next few lines of code. Just bringing it, but since we know the row already, we can bring it in B, C, D, and E. Going to take all that information, place it inside this header. Okay, so once we have that, also we need to load the work order items. We're going to load it using an advanced filter. So basically in this one, what we're going to be doing is determining the last row, making sure we already have this work order because it's a formula, so whatever's in G1. And then we're going to run an advanced filter so we only load items from the work order. We're going to loop through all the work items here, and we know what row on the work order they are placed, and we know what database row. So we're going to bring all that in. We do that just with these lines of code. We're going to run our advanced filter, assuming that the last row is not 3. Now we know that the last row in this case is 16, but if it's less than 3, we can exit out of that. So once we know we have data, we can run our advanced filter A2 through F. We're going to run an advanced filter. We have a criteria I2 through I3. That's our criteria here. Copy to range. We're going to bring copy to range K2 through B2. That's going to bring all the information. Once we have that information, we can, assuming that we actually have, if for some reason we're going to get the last item row, we're going to use range K. It's going to get us the last item. In this case, our last item is 6. But if for some reason our last item was less than 3, we'd have to exit out. That means there's no items. So assuming we have items, we're just going to run a loop from 3 to the last item results. Or basically, all we're going to do is bring in all of that information, take all of this information, and bring it right into our work order. We know what row. We're going to assign that row, 7, 8, or 9. That row is going to come from right here, 7, 8, 9. We know the row. Once we know the row located in column O, we can then place it. So the work order item row is equal to sheet 3 O and the result row. That's going to get us our work order row. Once we have that row, we can bring in all the information, tech notes. Basically, it's the opposite of what we did to save it. That's it. Next up, all we need to do is set the new work order to false, set the work order load to false, B87, and then again, display all of our buttons. That's it. Deleting, relatively simple. We're going to go over deleting real quick. Basically, all we need to do is, in this case, work order row. I want to know what row we're on. So assuming that there's a row, I know what row in the work order to delete. So row 3. In this case, row 3, we would delete that row, delete the entire row. So just what we're going to do. So are you sure? First, we're going to let them know to make sure that they do want to delete the work order. Assuming that if they say no, then we're just going to exit the sub. Nothing else to go on if they say no. Assuming that they say yes, then we're going to always want to make sure that we actually have a work order row located in B9. If we do have a row, we're going to assign that to the variable. Work order row is going to be B9. Then we know what row to delete. And then we're just going to automatically run the macro work order new. That's going to automatically clear everything out. Print simple. Print is just going to print one line of code. I've set this particularly print, so when we click the print, it's going to automatically print to the default printer with just one line of code. My default printer is called Snagit Editor, so it's going to print on my Snagit Editor just like this. So it's going to look just like this, and it's going to print automatically just like that. So that's all you have to do. Print is just one line of code. Print out, and then a bunch of settings, false, and then assign the print area. That's it. Just prints the default. One line of code. Very, very simple. All right, that's it for the work order. That's how we get everything. That's how we create. I know I went really quick over that, but that's not the focus of this training. Let's take a look at this while we get into the maps. Keep in mind that our default picture located is in a Dropbox public called Maps Pics. That is where I'm storing my pictures right here, which is my location here, Dropbox Map Pics. That's where I put my pictures in. I want to make sure that I have the from address. We actually are using just one of these from addresses, not both of them. The map zoom level, we don't need this one and that. So we only have one from address. I was going to set a company address and then a from address. So we have different things. I'll clear one of these out. We only need both of these. So that's fine. We don't need that. Okay, so let's go into the details of the map macros. And before we do that, let's just focus on some of the, we just need to know some dimensions of some variables here. We're going to use OTTP object. we are going to use Integromat, which is a really great application website that I'm going to show you, and it allows us to create multiple scenarios. If you've seen a few of my last videos the last few months, you may be familiar with that. If not, no problem. I'm going to walk you step by step through it. We also want to define the URL as a string. We're going to be sending something called a webhook. It's going to look something like this. And what that's going to do for both the get directions and the maps, it's going to alert. It's going to create a trigger. And that trigger, and we can send information. I want to send the from address. In this case, our from address is located on J2. I'll find something else for something in J4. We're going to find something. I think I wanted like an alternate from address or maybe a dynamic, something like that I had in mind here. But really, we're going to be using this one in J2. So I'll clear this one out. We don't need that. Okay, so next up, what I want to do is I want to also define the string. I want to send some information. So we need a picture path for that. We need a job ID, picture location. Of course, the picture location is going to be located in here. And then I want the full picture path. So basically, what we also want to set a default zoom level. So first macro that we want to do is I want to get directions. So let's go see how we do that. So to get directions, I need two things. I need the from address. We're going to focus that on J2. And I also need the to address. And the to address is going to be located right here in E3. So we're going to put those into variables called from address and to address. And the next thing what I want to do is I want to create an object. What this is going to do is going to allow us to send from address and send to address to some website. And in return, we're going to get back the directions. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a URL, and that's going to be called a webhook. How do we build this webhook and how do we get that? That's what I'm going to show you right now. And it's going to be using a tool called Integromat. And this right here is Integromat. This is a great tool. You can look it up, Integromat. I'm going to include the links down below. And it is a free tool, at least for up to 1,000 different triggers per month, and you get up to 2 active scenarios. So it's great. We can create multiple scenarios, multiple triggers, and I've created a bunch. In this case, what we want to do is we want to set some kind of trigger from Excel into that and then pull out and send these from address, send the to address, and get back the direction. So I'm going to show you just how we do that. So how would we create a new scenario? Let's go ahead and create just a new scenario, give you an idea, and then we'll go back into the ones that I've created. Okay, so in this new scenario, what I want to do is we're going to start out with that webhook, because that's what we want Excel to send information. So we're going to type in webhook. And then also what I want to do, I want to use Google Maps. So I'm going to click on Google. Google Maps is going to help us. Google Maps. Type that in, and then we'll click on Google Maps. That's what I want to use for the get directions. We're going to use a few more, but I'm going to start with those continue. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to click webhooks. So again, let's go up, watch, I'll show you that again. Click here and click webhooks. If you don't have it up here, you could easily just search for it here. We've already done it. So webhooks. So we want something called a custom webhook. That's what we're going to focus on. And the next thing what I want to do is I want to create add, or click add and create a new one. You can create any name you want, here. Once you do that and click save, we don't need IP predictions. Click save, and what that's going to do is going to generate this webhook. This webhook here, you can copy. This is what we're focused on right here. I want to copy that to the clipboard. And what you're going to do is you're going to paste that inside your code. That's what you're going to paste right here. I'm not going to paste it because I've already got it, but up to the question mark, but not including the question mark. So up to, we're going to highlight this and paste it in. That's what we want to send. So that's the webhook we're going to send. What else do I want to send? That's the trigger, but I want to send information. I want to send a from address. Notice I have the word from address. This is not a variable. This can be anything you want here as long as you know what it is. This is our variable. So this is going to actually send the actual from address. And I also want to set the to address. So we're going to create a label here. This is a label. This is a label. This is the data, and this is the data we're sending. So we want to send two things, the from address and the to address. Once we send that in, it is going to automatically open that. It's going to automatically recognize that. So then once we have another one, I want to take that information, I want to bring it into Google Maps. And in this case, what I want to do is I want to get directions. So how would it look like? If I send that data, let's take a look at least this part, what I've already created for you right here inside this one. This is the one I'm focused on. So if we zoom in, we see that we also, a webhook that I've just created, I've got a webhook here, and I also have Google Maps. Now, when I run that information, it's going to send. So while I'm going to click this one, I'm going to click run once. And what that's going to do is going to listen for that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this macro right here, running that macro, and it's going to listen. It's going to get that information, And notice notice the 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, so we're going to go through these steps. So what did it find? So what I did is it found two things. So I put the origin as the from address and the to address, because as soon as we send that map webhook, it's going to recognize the from address as 100 Wilshire Boulevard. It's going to recognize the to address as 322 New Horizon, Milwaukee. It's kind of a far distance, but that's what we have. That's the same one in our application. Notice that our from address is 100 Wilshire. Our to address is Milwaukee, New Horizon, Milwaukee. So it sent that information through the webhook from address to address. It sent it into Integromat. So now that Integromat has that, what data did it find? Let's take a look at the data. The input, if I click here, this one here, it's going to show me exactly what was done. So our input, our origin is 100 Wilshire. Our travel mode is driving, and our destination is, because why? Because we clicked get directions. Now get directions, we're going to put in that. All I'm going to do is take that from address and put it right here. Obviously we've done it already. And then I'm going to take that to address and put it right in the destination. Obviously done it already again. I'm going to set travel mode as driving. You could set walking, bicycling, transit, whatever you like. You could add different waypoints. This is going to add different, if you have maybe 3 or 4 stops, you can add multiple stops in here, which is very, very cool. We also have some advanced settings which we're not really using. You could use tolls and highways and ferries. You could set the metric or kilometer. You could define the time, like departure time. Like let's say you want in this case, he's going to leave, the customer job, let's say, is at 3 o'clock. You set the arrival time at 3 o'clock, and it's going to tell you exactly what time we should leave. Some really cool things. There's a lot of information here that we're not using, but it's really, really handy. If we take a look at this, okay, so we have all this. So we know our origin. That's all we want in the destination. So if we take a look here, so we have our input, what's going in, origin, and the destination. Here's our addresses here. So what's our output? What I want is the direction. Now we get a lot of information. Google gives us a lot of information. So what we really need to do is parse that information. I don't need all the information. Like I don't need the distance. I don't need the duration, although it's nice, 1 day, 6 hours. We're moving different states. So obviously you wouldn't be that far. But so it's really, really cool though. You've got so many, you've got the end address, you've got the beginning address, right? So we've got a lot of information that we're not using, but you can use it. We've got coordinates. This is what we want to use. I want to use steps, or I want to use parts. And so inside, this is a lot. That's too much. Let me just put up an address. I'm going to run this. I'm going to take a more common address. Inside, I'm going to select a different customer, some address that I know of, closer to the destination. And then I'm going to put in something like this address right here. Okay, this address right here. And what that's going to do is automatically generate. Now what I'm going to do is I just want to get less steps, because that was obviously state to state, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to click run once, and then I'm going to run this macro one more time, get directions. And that's going to be a little bit more normal, a bit more common. Okay, so it's got our information here. I want to run it once more, make sure it ran properly. Get directions, and I want to watch it run. I like watching it. Okay, so now everything runs. So now let's take a look at it. Let's go back into where we were. Let's look into steps. This is where we were. So in this case, we only have 9 steps. It's much closer. Obviously it was still in California. It's in the same Los Angeles. So now we have 9 steps. So this is where the tricky part is, because Google breaks down the first part of all I want is this. I don't want distance. I don't want duration. I want only this. I want the HTML instructions, but it breaks it each down into different steps. So this is the first step. You head southwest on Wilshire Boulevard towards Ocean. What is the second step? The second step, turn right onto Ocean Avenue. The third step, right? Turn left. So basically what I want to do is I want to take all of these HTMLs, I want to extract them inside the steps, and then I want to combine them, and I also want to remove this HTML code. This is not going to be helpful for us inside Excel. If we were at a website, it would be helpful, but it's not really helpful for us. So how do we do that? How do we extract just this information and put it into some readable format? Okay, that's where our second part is going to come in, or actually our third part. Our first part is the webhook, second part is the Google Maps. So now what I want to do is I want to bring something called iterator. If you want to know what this is, it's here. Click on here and you can create an iterator. What that's going to do is allow us to filter and parse this information so we only take out what we want. I don't want it all. So I'm going to choose an iterator on this iterator, and basically what I want to do is I want to map something. I want to map, remember what we want? We want steps. That's what we're focused on here. Let's check the output again. Remember, we have a lot of output. I'm only focused on this part here. This part here, steps, is all I want to. And not only, I don't want everything in steps, I only want a little bit of it. What do I want? I only want the HTML instructions. So I only want steps, and I only want those information that's called HTML instructions. So what I want to do is I want to filter it. So we're going to map, because it's an array, I want to map the steps, and I only want the HTML instructions. So that's it. That's all we have to do. What that's going to do is extract only that information. But then remember, it's still in HTML code. Now I need one more step. Now I've got it all together here. Let's take a look at the output here. Now we have it in different bundles. Notice we have it on different bundles here. Let's take a look at the I want to look at the output here. Here's the output, okay? Here's the input. Remember, we have all these steps, right? All these steps. But what's the output? The output is only the HTML. Notice we only have the HTML. We only have the directions, but it's still in HTML format. So the next step is going to remove the HTML format. So we've got everything we want, but it's not in the correct format. That's what our next step. It's called Tools, Text Aggregator. Let me zoom into that Text Aggregator. To get to that, you'd find it here. And again, in this one, it's called Text Aggregator. So you scroll down here, and we're looking for this Text Aggregator. Aggregates multiple strings into one text. So I want to do two things. I want to take those multiple strings into one text, and I want to take the HTML out of it. I want to strip the HTML out of it. We can do both of those things with this tool. So here it is in Tools, Aggregator. So what does it look like? Let's take a look at the input. Again, it's the same thing, remember. Here we have it, and now we have it much better. So how do we do that? Again, we take an iterator. We want the separator is going to be a brand new row. And what do we want the text? So this is going to take and combine everything automatically. But the last thing we need to do is strip the HTML. We can use it using this command, strip HTML, and then whatever the value is. This is the flow control. This is coming from the iterator. I'm taking the value. This is what I want. Now, how do we find this strip HTML? Well, that's going to be located right here inside the text. If we look in this, I'm going to look for something called strip HTML. This right here, strip HTML. So basically what that's going to do is going to take something like this B for bold, hello, bold, right? It's going to take that HTML and it's going to make it just hello. So that's going to strip our HTML. So basically, this will aggregate all of our text into one group, and then this command will take all of that and strip out all the HTML. Great, so now that I've got it, but now I need to get it back into Excel. How do we get it back into Excel? Well, that's the last step. This one is a webhook response. And notice in our sample here, we can also add something called a webhook response. This is a webhook response. So it's going to take whatever information we have and it's going to bring it back. In our actual live one, we have just that. And so in this case, we're going to take what we have, and we have a lot of options, but I want to get it exactly from this. I want to take our text that this is generated. Notice that this generated this text. It's in purple. Purple is the color, right? So the output of this is text. If we look in the input, we know the input, and we look at the output. The output is this text right here. This text is what I want to get. I'm going to take that text, I want to put it in the body of a webhook response. It is this text that we are going to now get inside back in Excel. So back into our code. So now we understand this. Again, let's just go to a quick review on this. We're going to send the webhook. We're going to send the to address and the from address. We're going to put that into Google. Google's going to give us tons of information based on those points to and from address. Iterator is going to take that information. It's going to group and put it all into a text, and it's going to extract that information and only pull out the HTML. Our tools is going to then take that information, group it all together just what we want, and it's also going to strip out the HTML code. Our webhook response is going to help us take that and bring it back into Excel. So again, we have our code back into our code. So we're going to send this out. We're going to use these lines of code to send it out. This is what's going to send it out. This line of code is going to send that information to here. This line of code is going to get that response. It's going to put that response into a string. If for some reason the string says scenario failed to send, then maybe there's no internet. So from, or maybe there's no to address. So in that case, message box from address not found. Okay. If for some reason there's no internet, there's going to create an error right here. So on error go to no internet, it's going to go right here. Please check your internet connection. If there's no internet, there'll be an issue with the JSON sending. Assuming that there's no internet and assuming that it doesn't say scenario failed to send, then what I want to do is I want to take that text In case I noticed that there was some issue, sometimes this and NBSP appears, sometimes small error. So all I do is take this and replace it out with just a space. In case this shows up inside your directions, I saw that once, so I just replace it with nothing or space. So it's going to take that response and place it into F28. F28 is our cell inside the Excel. That is exactly where I want to get those directions. So great. Now all I need to do is just, when we change the address here, automatically it's going to send, it's going to update those directions automatically. And notice that we've now have our updated directions here. So again, take a look at these directions here, change the address automatically, and let's go back here. And those, wait one moment, our directions change automatically. It was really quick. Let me show you how that. Take a look at this again, changing it back again here, automatically changes it right here. Changes it right here. Okay, great. I'm glad I got to show you that part. The last thing is, how do we get this maps in there? This is the last macro that we're going to focus on. How do we get this map in here? Well, basically, the idea is, again, to send another webhook. In this case, I want to send this address to Integromat, and I want to download that particular picture inside our Dropbox, and I want to pull that picture and place it inside. But first I want to check, is this picture here or not? If it is here, just pull it out. We don't need to send the webhook. If it's not here, go and get the picture. So how do we do that? That's in this macro right here. Get map pictures. Okay, focus on sheet 1, job ID, that's going to be in B4. The to address is in E3. The picture location is in J3. That's the picture location. J3, that is where in our Dropbox file where we're going to be showing it. J3 is where our picture location. Make sure you put the last backslash on here. Okay, that's the location, because I don't put that in the code. I use that here. So that's where our pictures are going to be stored. That's where we're going to look to see if those pictures are present. Okay, the zoom level, I want to set the zoom level. Zoom level is really cool. I'll show you that. So in case you want to change it, let's change the zoom level just out. If you want to do like we could do a 20, right? If the zoom level, I'm going to check for a new address. Let's go ahead and put in a brand new address here. And then what it's going to do is going to automatically look up, and you'll see down here the zoom is going to change. And you see this is zoomed in a lot more. Notice it's really, really close. So we're going to focus on just the zoom. And if we use a zoom level that's out, let's say we use a zoom level that's 5 or something really small. Now we can see, let's change the address on here and take a look at what that might look like. Select a different address. And with this particular address, we can check, see this address is going to be much more zoomed out. So we can really control the zoom feature. So we have that there as well. All right, so let's go. I'm going to go back to 15. That's kind of like 15 or 16 is something kind of that I found pretty decent to show us a good level of detail. Of course, you can set it to whatever you want. And we'll put it back to one of our more familiar addresses here, at least that I'm familiar with from California. Okay, so now we have that. So now at least we can see the street names with this type of zoom level. So how do we do that? So we set the zoom level. That's going to be in J5. And I want to get the full picture path. The picture path is going to be built on the picture location. Of course, that's located in J3. I want to put in the words map job, and I want to put in the job ID and then .png. That's the format of the picture. So because I want to set that picture path, the first thing I want to do is I want to see if it's there. If that picture exists, we don't need to go get it, right? So first thing I want to do is shapes map picture delete. In case there's any map picture, I want to delete it. I've wrapped that around on air zoom next, go to 0 in case it doesn't exist. So this is the next line of code. I want to check to see if that picture exists. If the directory of picture path, VB directory, does not equal empty, then the picture exists. In that case, go to picture exists. Picture exists. It's going to skip all of this, which is going to help it. And it's going to go right down here. So the next, we're going to be able to insert it. So, but if it doesn't exist, then we have to go get it. So the first thing, again, I want to download that map picture. So all I have to do, again, is create this object that we did last time, send in a specific webhook, and this time we're changing the webhook. I've got a brand new scenario that I've created right here. Let's take a look at this scenario. This one is one I'm focused on here. This is called, we're going to call this get picture. You can change the name. Let me change that. Call this get picture scenario. Okay, so we can change the name. So this, again, we're going to send the webhook. And if you look at this, I've got a webhook here. This is the same exact webhook that I've copied and placed it right in here up to the guest. This time I want to send some information. I want to send the job ID, and I want to send the to address and the zoom level. So I want to send that information. I want to send 3 things: the job ID, the to address, and the zoom level. So we're going to send all of that information there. And then again, we're going to send all of that into the increment. Let's take a look at what that might look like. I'm going to click run once. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this And then what it's going to do, actually, we need to use the new address because it's going to skip all that because I have that address in here. So let's go ahead and just change the address on here. It's going to automatically run. And let's take a look back inside our scenario. So now it's running. You see it just running. There it is. Now it just ran. Okay, so let's take a look. What did we get? So it sent 4000 Burling Avenue, set a specific to address. So we've got a new address, Black Horse Pike. That is the address that was sent here, Black Horse Pike. So we've got it. We've got a brand new information, brand new directions here. So we see that it was sent out through our webhook. We've got the zoom level here. We've got the job ID here, and we've got the information. So all the information got sent through our webhook. Let's take a look inside Google Maps. So we select on Google Maps. Now in this case, if you wanted to create Google Maps, how would you do it? You would just select any, let's go back to our sample scenario here, or actually our new scenario here. All we would need to do is just click in here, click Google Maps. And in this case, what we want to do is we want to select something called Get a Static Map Image. That's what we want. And what do I want to put in there? I want to put the address. That's going to be mapped. So let's go back. Now that you understand how to get a static map image, let's go back into our scenario just so we can see that. I'm going to close this out here so we don't see it. So this is what we have. So get a static map image. And what do we want to add? This information came from the webhook. So I'm going to put in the to address here. I'm going to put in the zoom level here, which is dynamic. We sent that out. And then what I want to do is I want to set the image. So you can set this height, the width and the height to anything you want. I've just set some I've set some widths and some heights that are going to help us work with our application. Also, you can click markers, right? If you want to edit this, you can select the to address, you can select the marker size, you can select the color, right? Notice that in our application, we've set a marker as red. You can set yours to anything you want. If you change it to blue, it's going to automatically set to blue. A lot of really, really cool tricks with this. You can set even a name and number on that. So that's going to be the marker for our map. So we can set the format in case I wanted PNG. Map type is road map, satellite, terrain, hybrid, lots of information here. So it gives more information on what you can send here. So basically we're going to send it. It's going to create that for us. The next thing I want is Dropbox. Again, to create Dropbox, all you need to do is connect your Dropbox. And there's one more thing I wanted to go over with you really quick. When you have a Google Maps, now I've already connected my Google Maps, but when you click here, Google Maps, right, and you click Get Directions, what you need to do is click Add. Okay, this is the important steps, so take a look. What you need is an API key. So I'm going to walk you through some steps to get that API key. So how would you go about doing that? Well, the first thing what you want to do is you want to navigate to consoledevelopersgoogle.com. Consoledevelopersgoogle.com. And I've got it right here. Console to go. Let's update that. So consoledevelopersgoogle.com. And this is going to get you your API key. Just 10 steps. So we're going to follow each one of these so we can get yours. So the first thing what you want to do is click on here. Or if you've never had it, there'll be something called Create Project here. So Create Project here. Or if you have an existing one, New Project here. So basically all you want is a new project. Once you have the new project, what you want to do is you want to enter any project name that you want. So here we can just put in Test4 Project. Okay, any name, Test4. And then what you want to do is click Create. So once you have Create, you want to click Enable APIs and Services. So click here, Enable APIs and Services. So I want to click that. Once we have enabled, there's 8 specific things that we need to enable for Google Maps. So let's go over those 8 things. The first is geocoding. So type in geocoding. We want that. And when it comes up, geocoding API, click that and then click Enable. And once that's enabled, the second is Maps Elevation. Maps Elevation, that's the second one. So we're going to click, once it's found, click Maps Elevation API, and then go ahead and click Enable on that. The third is Time Zone. So we're going to type in Time Zone. We want to take that API and enable that to make sure Time Zone. And the fourth is Directions. So let's go ahead and put in Directions. And the fourth is Directions API. Okay. Click on Directions API and then enable that. The fifth is Distance. Type in Distance API. We want that. That's going to help us get the distance. Click on District Matrix API. That's the one. Click Enable on that one. And the sixth is Roads. So Roads API. I'm going to enable all these 8 total. We want to Roads API. Click Enable. The seventh is Map Static API. Map Static API. That's the one we want. Map Static API. Click that. Click Enable. And then the last is Places API. That's it. That's the last one. And then make sure we enable that. Okay, once you have enabled all of that, what we want to do is we want to navigate to APIs and services, then credentials. So in our menu, click APIs, services, credentials, okay? And click create credentials. Once you're in the screen, click create credentials. Click on API key. And then what's it going to do is creating API, we're going to copy that API key, then close it. Next up, what you want to do is you want to navigate to console.cloud.google.project. And I'm going to go over that with you. Console.cloud.google.com billing. You want to enable the billing. Console.cloud, Google, project, billing, enable. So it's going to enable those. You can also get to it from here under the billing here. That'll get you there. All right, once you go to cloudgoogle.com, projects, billing, enable, you're just going to click on this one. Once you click on this, it's automatically going to enable. That's it. I've already reached the maximum of mine, so I don't want to do any more. But that's it. So once you have all that, let's go back into the Integromat here. Once you're back in there, all you're going to do is you're going to paste in that API key right here. Paste it in. That's it. That's all you have to do, the one you've copied over, and that's going to enable your Google. Okay, great. So I'm glad I got to show that to you. Back into our picture scenario here. So now that we've enabled it, now we have webhooks. So now we've got our picture in here. If we take a look, we've added our to address, we've added our picture format, we've got our picture, we've sent it up. Now what I want to do is I want to add Dropbox. Again, with Dropbox, all we need to do, again, is just click add and then look for Dropbox or search for it, make sure we enable it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to click upload a file. What kind of file do I want to load? I want to upload a map. So here we need to choose the folder. Where do we want to store that? Of course, I've already done it. I'm going to put it in my public, and I've got a specific folder inside that called map pics. So we're going to map that up. Next up, what do I want to do? Well, let's just cancel that and I'll show you exactly what I've actually done. I don't need that step because I've already done it. So what have I done? So here I'll click on maps, and then I want to set a specific file name. And this is where the job comes in, that job number. Maps job, I want to put that text. Then I want to put the job ID, and then I want to put the PNG. And I want to make sure to overwrite existing file. If it's here already, I want to overwrite it just in case so that it's automatically, or maybe there's an update. So make sure you click overwrite existing. That'll replace it. So what that's going to do is going to take that map picture generated from Google and put it in your Dropbox file. Next up, I've got a response, but I didn't do so much. You don't need a response in here. I put in a response, but basically our response is going to be looking in Dropbox. Okay. And then we don't need this. Obviously, I was just showing you this. We can delete this, and we really don't need a response, so we can delete that. No need for a response. But if you want to put a response like picture downloaded, you could easily just click here and create a response like any kind of response you want, like webhook response. Then you have a lot of information. You could put the name or whatever, but I don't really need a response. But you could easily put one. Why don't we need a response? We don't need a response because our response is going to be automatically in Dropbox. Then what I need our code to do is I need our code to look in this folder, find the picture, and then put it in Excel. And that's just what I do in the rest of the code. So the first thing, once we have, if there's an issue with JSON, there's going to be go to no internet. But what I want to do is I want to run a wait count. So what we're going to do is run a count. While this picture downloads from the internet automatically into your Dropbox, we're going to continue to check the picture path to see if it's in the picture. As soon as it does not equal empty, that means it's found. Assuming it's not found, it's going to keep looping through for a while, depending on how big this number is, until it's found. So when it's found, we're going to exit 4. As soon as it's found, we're going to, assuming that it's not empty, then we can actually wait a little bit now. I want to wait, even though it's found, I want to make sure it's loaded in Dropbox. So I'm going to put in a small wait. Picture exists here. Now the picture, we just need to insert it inside your sheets. So I'm going to take that picture based on the picture path, and I'm going to create a brand new picture. I'm going to call it map picture. And then what I want to do something with it. What do I want to do? Well, I want to set the size of it, and I want to set the width, and I want to set the position. I want to set the position exactly based on D28, the left and the top of D28. I want to set the width based on the column width of D and E, and I want to set the height based on the height of rows 28 through 38. So that's just what I do inside the next line of code. First thing we're using, I don't want to lock the aspect ratio in case I need to make some small changes. The left position is based on D28 plus 1. I just want to move it slightly over to the right, slightly over. So, and I also want to move it slightly off the top too. So the top position is based on D28 plus 1. That's going to move it down just a little bit. I want to set the width based on the current width of columns D and E minus just a little bit less. And I want to set the height based on the height of the rows from rows 28 to 33 plus a little bit less. That's it. Assuming that it is not found, if it's not found, picture doesn't exist. Why would it not exist? If directory does not equal empty, then we're going to do this. If it does equal empty, else, then we're just going to put a message box, picture not found. That is it. That's all we have to do. If there's no internet, it'll go to please connection. That is it. That's how you create a dynamic work order with a dynamic picture and automated directions based on from and to. I hope you have enjoyed this training. If you have, make sure you go ahead and grab our 150 workbook pack. It's just $56, and it's going to help us out tremendously. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining me on this training. We'll see you next week with something brand new and unique as always. Have a great week.